I didn't think it was doable, but Arydia has raised my standards for what is possible and what I expect from big box board games. I was already deeply impressed with games like Frosthaven and Oathsworn for having a ton of accommodations to work with the medium of board games to help players organize and set up, on top of being incredibly thoughtful with how the physicality is utilized in gameplay, like with the tangibility of their world maps tying to exploration and unlockables. But this game, Arydia, has raised the goddamn peak, man. I tell you what, it feels like every single aspect of this game's components were painstakingly crafted with clear intent about how it was envisioned to be interacted with. Most other board games essentially just give you a bunch of cards and tokens and sheets that, besides maybe nice aesthetics, only function as the things that convey the information needed to play the game, and then an insert that maybe fits it all, with organization usually being a crapshoot. But components can be so much more than simply information representation, because while these pieces are what gives board games their tangible feel, they are also what makes people not want to play board games because of the work that goes into managing said components. And all that deeply ties into the incredible gameplay that so far is the only board game campaign that even comes close to giving that wondrous feeling of eagerness exploring an open world filled with possibility. I kind of gave up on thinking that it was possible for a board game to emulate that adventurous curiosity I got when playing Fallout games as a kid, or nowadays Elden Ring and its DLC. Oftentimes with board games, too many exploration features are abstracted mechanics/rules, which is already an uphill battle compared to video games, since fiddling around with components has a tendency to hamper the moment-to-moment pacing. Plus, board games can never do that video game bit that every developer nowadays does with trying to imitate FromSoft's "see that mountain off in the distance? You can go there." And it's not like Arydia is trying to do that, because while it can sort of feel like a video game, it knows it's a board game. It sticks to its constraints and works with them to the best degree I've ever seen. On everything I've experienced as a board game enjoyer, this game is not just among the best, no, it has the best component quality and usage I've ever seen. Already, it has card indexes and divider tabs. A great start, but given its relatively easy implementation is less impressive to me nowadays and is something that I feel should be expected, but I will keep pointing them out because somehow this still isn't the default if a game has a bajillion cards. Not having these is floundering at the bare minimum, and le epic fail, because outdated implementation earns outdated millennial lingo. Okay, but now check this shit out. Card IDs on the bottom of all cards. Extremely easy to find any card in the game thanks to this organization, but wait, what's this? The back has the ID on a different side and color scheme? Every single card is extremely easy to find, and there's a way to know if you've seen/used it already? Fucking genius! And also, oh so necessary for this type of game. Alright, I should probably explain what Arydia even is, so you know why that matters. And you should know that this is a sponsored video, though not paid in cash. It's just Far Off Games sending it over for free, which still means sponsored, because we gotta check off that paid promotion box when receiving something of value. Not making the Oathsworn video mistake where a bunch of people thought that one was paid. So if we actually want cash money here, I'm gonna direct you to our Patreon and Coffee, which just raised enough to fund a John Company 2nd edition review, so expect that coming up. Anyways, Arydia is an open world campaign with a D20 system that borrows a lot from TTRPGs. When I initially heard that and found out this is the same guys who did Xayah, I very much enjoyed its sandbox feel, I was already sold. Knew it was going to be a good game, didn't think it was going to be this good. But as a result of the TTRPG inspiration, it's super easy to explain. There's an overworld you traverse with a bunch of locations you can visit. If you enter one, you place your minis on map sheets where you can explore and interact with points of interest, NPCs, and events. NPCs might ask for your help with monsters attacking them. You might investigate an odd point of interest that makes you reevaluate your hunt. An event might lead to an encounter with bandits. Whatever it is you're interacting with on the map, you'll be asked to draw its card and make decisions, which may also result in attribute checks where you roll the good old D20, add your attribute value, and see if you succeed. These situations, or even just exploring and walking into a room full of enemies, are what leads to fights. For combat, it uses the same map grid you were just exploring, but once those enemies are placed, you're not allowed to freely move around like you were when adventuring, and instead there's actual turns between players and enemies. They have AI cards, cards saying what they can do, and on their turns they draw a threat card, which either activates them so they actually do AI stuff on their turn, or generates threat, which is a general bad guy resource they can spend for improved bad guy stuff. On your turns, you have 2 normal actions and 1 minor action, and you'll place their tokens on stuff on your player board to use them, possibly spending stamina or mana or even combo, which is pretty much just good guy threat, aka a general resource that your abilities might use. Your attacks most of the time have you roll a d20 to see how effective they are, and causing damage isn't numerical. Instead, enemies have a hit grid that your attacks say how to fill up, and once it's full, bad guy is defeated and removed. And lastly, the premise is that you all play as exiles who are banished for various reasons depending on your character creation, and you're trying to earn these squills from locals who've been gifted them by the guild to hand out to exiles who've done something good for them. Can't just forcefully take them away like by theft, cause they magically crumble to dust, by the way. So you go around as a general fantasy archetype, doing stuff like finding missing peoples, killing monsters that attack people, delivering stuff to earn enough squills to get yourself a pardon. But back to the glazing, because you've got hundreds upon hundreds of cards that you pull up just for running around interacting with the world, this organization system comes in clutch for making the whole experience smooth with tabbing through, finding anything quickly, and if you've already done it or not. Which, by the way, is also something done for all the map sheets, because they all have a back with something that happens the first time you explore it before flipping and placing the actual traversable side. Using this, you can also tell which maps you've already cleared, because the map boxes have these corner gaps big enough to allow you to tab through the maps and see what's face down or not, as well as making it easier to pull the sheets out in the first place. And while we're talking about backsides, dude, these are easily some of the coolest card back arts out there. Furthermore, the backs of enemy AI cards and your actions all have FAQs on the back. Dude, what an incredibly thoughtful use of space. I think for my playtime of like just under 30 hours true solo, I only had to look something up on BGG once, but it was instantly found and resolved within a minute. Also, the readability and color coding is so distinct and aesthetically pleasing. Already, the colors are needed for good indexing, but also the way different types of text are divided on the cards themselves makes it so clear what's narrative, what's rules, what's someone talking, etc. Like this low-key just looks like if it were a clean video game menu UI. Already, we're off to a good start, but now I want to talk about the big deal, absolutely mind-boggling components that really wowed the fuck out of me. First off, all the minis come pre-painted. What? I did not think they were being for real here, but no, yeah, everything is painted and it looks pretty good. Obviously not crazy professional with expertly done lighting and shadows, but like, this is absolutely tabletop ready, which also makes the whole hidden components gimmick work so much better because when you get to be surprised by your first time seeing an enemy, its mini is already painted. In comparison to, say, Oathsworn, which has hidden bosses, and yes, it's a joy to discover and unbox them, but it's impossible to have the first time you see them be painted. Like, at best, you open them up ahead of time and paint them for the rest of your group. The only audience this is going to be bad for are the guys who want extremely high quality and detailed minis they can paint themselves. But that is definitely not the majority of people who are playing through these games, considering painting everything might as well take as long as completing the entire campaign. Also, the minis let you swap heads around, so you can actually represent if you're a human or a furry, which is an awesome feature for this type of semi-role-playing game. I also don't usually see colored base rings that are internal instead of external, which is a great call to make them take up less space on the map. We also got little plastic trays as component holders. Way better than baggies. I love them. Oh, and there's metal coins? Like, bro, they did not have to go this hard. And this part is absolutely absurd because there are not only dual layered boards so nothing slips around, but also triple layered boards with the most satisfying punch out and slotting component tangibility I've ever felt. I'm already incredibly excitable over dual layered boards to the point that it's actually noticeably marring single layers for me as someone who wants to really take in the physical aspect of board games. This triple layer action is undoubtedly the best way to hide components in plain sight, something that a bunch of envelopes or tuck boxes just can't do. It would be so much more annoying if you had to stop the flow of the game to dig into the box, finding an unlock identifier versus, oh, we going to a new area on the overworld, just punch it out, flip it over. Oh, and check out these dossiers that even hide the shapes of stuff you're punching out. Like, that is so cool. I've lived my life just assuming unlockables had to be done with envelopes and tuck boxes. Didn't think there was room for more innovation to make things spoiler-free by hiding size and shape aspects. Those varied shapes can go to all sorts of places like your character board and even overworld map tiles. One of the more goofy things you can get from them are character tiles, which are just cool labels you can get for achieving certain things. I spent most of the game as Scrump, the kind, feelish scamp, and currently I'm a buff trickster lurker. I'm not actually buff, I'm just good at tricking people. Everyone knows furries aren't trustworthy, they keep hacking government secrets. Anyways, I love silly achievement stuff like this, and if every every big board game is criticized for trying to be a video game, we may as well go all the way and let people earn achievement titles that calcify memorable moments and facilitate tabletop roleplay with friends. This character map, by the way, is so well done for pretty much all the same reasons in the Lands of Evershade review, where it's a dual layered board with slots for everything, which makes all your character aspects super tangible and have clearly laid out options plus slot limitations. To reiterate most of those points, you're not constantly writing, which is hard to do on a playmat, while also scattering eraser shavings over your table. Nothing slips out, the layout can guide the players, the designers can design clear numerical limitations and amount of equipment/abilities. Speaking of, Lands of Evershade and Arydia feel really similar in a lot of ways, and I say that with the meaning that this is a good thing. They both distill the quintessential TTRPG experience into a board game. They both have insanely deluxe components. The combat is undoubtedly that TTRPG dungeon crawling vibe of do a move, then do attacks that roll an attribute check. The story and combat are weaved together oh so well. Here's hoping the organization for Evershade turns out anywhere near as good as Arydia's. Also, I feel like I need to make this clear because when I was reading forums and comments, it seems like there's an impression some people got from what I said about Lands of Evershade that the combat was overly simple and there's very little of it. Cause I was about to describe Arydia similarly, but realized that this needs more footnotes to not give the wrong impression. To reiterate, you can heavily influence how much combat you're going to be dealing with. In the case of Arydia, there's the usual mainline encounters that you're not going to be able to skip, but there's a lot of areas you don't even have to visit if you want to skip them. On the flip side, if you want tons of fighting, go explore everything and or take up jobs, which are basically side quests you can pick up to earn extra money. As for the combat complexity, I found it pretty simple, a similar depth to Lands of Evershade because of how the actions work of just picking stuff you slotted into your board. But that's coming from a guy who loves having like 50 options on a turn and is used to dealing with a million rules, so having at most like 5 abilities and 2 weapons is gonna feel simple in comparison. This is more than enough for most people, especially because you can swap stuff around, and again, I don't even think I'd want it to be more complex to prevent downtime when playing in a group. But also, shout out to the hit grid and the combo/threat systems for being fresh and breaking up what would have been standard combat play patterns for the genre. The grid makes you have to plan out your sequence of different attacks with different hit patterns to efficiently fill it out, on top of having contingencies for bad rolls. Meanwhile, combo and threat makes it so that positioning isn't going to devolve into 2 opposing sides meeting up, standing still, and rolling dice at each other. This is because sometimes you draw threat cards that don't have the enemies activate on their turn, but rather bank threat to buff their next attack. So you have to take that into account for what actions enemies are capable of doing, as well as when you plan to use your defensive capabilities, because it's not even guaranteed the enemies are going to actually attack on the next turn. Elegant, thoughtful, dynamic gameplay, where you got a plan, but then it occasionally gets switched up thanks to randomness and you gotta adapt. Meanwhile, combo is a resource you generate for moving around, so boom, incentivize movement by getting the resource thingy to spend on certain abilities. I was playing as a rogue, and usually used combo on turning invisible, but it turns into an interesting puzzle since you're no longer hidden when you attack. Yeah, sometimes you don't have the action economy to move up, attack, and go hidden, so maybe you should just stay hidden, but sometimes you feel like an idiot for not attacking during the times the enemy didn't even activate, so you could have just attacked safely. Just the simple limitations of sneaking needing combo, plus it can't be done while adjacent to any enemies, means that as a melee character, you actually have to plan around how to get the most out of its usage and when to even weave it into your turns. Love this simple yet engaging decision dilemma. Huge fan of the combat here. Like, maybe I'd love a more complicated version only when playing solo, but I could also just play multiple characters, because right now, I'm really looking forward to when I get around to playing this with friends. Arydia is also designed to have very smooth and brisk pacing, which I can only imagine helps a lot with the game flow when in a group. It achieves this in 2 key ways. First, you're scarcely faced with a wall of text, as most cards you pull from interacting with something have a paragraph on the front and then the branches, usually a few sentences. This does mean that the story isn't going to be as deep as some other choose-your-own-adventure campaigns with massive storybooks, but Arydia doesn't need to do that when it hits the whimsical adventure vibes so hard with all the possibilities and emergent narratives from the paths you dare tread. Don't need a ton of words to describe natural open-world occurrences, like, as a fake example, you're told a village is getting a ludicrous amount of rainfall. You go check it out, but on the way, you run into a guy who's looking for a way to keep his failing traveling circus business afloat. You continue to the village encounter, which turns out it's been beset by giant frogs, seemingly drawn from all the rain. And upon further investigation, you find a magical artifact that you smash to stop the rain and disperse the frogs. You don't know who put it there, but you find a clue and set off to look for the next step of that. And while you're going deeper in that quest, randomly run into the circus person and find them thriving because their new show involves a bunch of giant frogs they found. A super funny happenstance that you may have totally forgot about in the first place. Shit like that happens all the time and is so satisfying to run into. And it does the open world curiosity chasing so well with how it's constantly setting things up and providing payoffs all over the place so that at any given time there's always something to chase while there's also a handful of loose threads you're wondering about how they're going to come into play. If you've ever played an open world game and just kept chasing the addicting feeling of wanting to pursue another loose end, that just one more quest feeling is here. And I never thought I'd get to experience that in a campaign board game, since other games, sessions are usually like a few hours long, but in Arydia, there are legitimately stop points that might take like 20 minutes in between each. The second pacing thing is how when you explore the map sheets, this is the exact same map as combat, which not only makes transitioning between modes of play incredibly smooth, but it makes the world so much less abstract because the story and combat are never these two different layouts that are starkly distinct with different modes of operation. It's such a big deal, not only for pacing, but also how you mentally visualize what's happening. There's a big difference between having a location described to you before setting up different combat maps and what you were doing in the exploratory story mode in a campaign game versus the place that you're exploring is just outright where you're going to be fighting in the first place. And by the way, there's 330 map sheets, with some of them even having further art on the back. Like, holy shit, this game is pure eye candy. The amount of diligence that needs to go into an open world game and actually have it function as intended with all the wondrous emergent situations is crazy work. It's why I push for just doing something more linear, especially if the vision needs a super cohesive sequence of events to occur and not get muddled up with random occurrences. Arydia's Kickstarter was funded way back in 2021, so given that it started fulfilling early this year means this thing was being worked on for like 6-7-ish years, because I'd imagine there has to be a good amount of work being done before the campaign. I just look at its legion of playtesters and proofreaders. Holy shit, that's what I'm talking about for big box QA. God, this shit makes me so happy. Like, I love new board games so much. We are just getting bangers after bangers. Arydia makes me feel so validated because all the component jank I complain about actually feels like it's being addressed, because honestly, I can barely even think of component issues that are actually impactful. Reminds me of how people complained in the 2010s and earlier about video game settings not having nearly enough options, and nowadays, option screens include everything under the sun to accommodate disabilities or just allowing adjusting whatever to preference. It's a lot more work on the creator side, but oh my god, does this work make the experience so much smoother. I'm ecstatic that this level of quality can be done for a big box. Like, hell yeah, dude. Gone are the days where you get 2017 Gloomhaven First Edition and have to look stuff up and organize everything yourself. By the way, Second Edition got that Frosthaven level of organization. Let's go! If I actually finished Arydia, because right now I think I'm a bit over a third of the way through because I full cleared the starting area and ended at level 4 out of 10 with 7 squills, then sat down to actually weigh a pro and con list, I'd have to imagine this gets a high score, possibly even a contender for a 10 out of 10 recommender score, which is an insane accomplishment. I'll let you know my personal enjoyment is at a 10 right now, and it was legitimately tough to put this away and start working on this video. But then I reframed my attitude because honestly, I don't even think I want to finish this solo, because I want to experience the full thing with friends who aren't necessarily board gamers but play TTRPGs. Which, by the way, this game is so considerate with resetting, because you can just pop all the punch outs back in and put the cards back to the default state like so. Since you don't write down shit and it's all components, this process is not a hassle at all. Plus, this is an amazing way to address the classic issue of unlockables in campaign games, because normally if you open a secret tuck box or whatever and pull out new cards and tokens, you then gotta figure out how to organize all that as it's incorporated into the rest of your components, unless you want to keep it all where it came from and divide components that should be stored together. So yeah, absolutely in love with this one. Can't wait to get around to playing this with friends, because I didn't even talk about the roleplay aspect, because you actually get little spendable bonuses on your rolls for roleplaying while reading out text. So it also encourages the whole group to get in on this, so everyone can earn those roleplay points. Can't wait to set that up, because we're going to be eating good over the next year with this and Lands of Evershade coming too. Catch you on the next video.